There's a bit of confusion. I thought I was due here at 10:30, so I apologize for being late. Thank you for inviting me, Professor. And I'm happy to be on the stage with my good friend and colleague in the planning department, Dr. Jayaranjan. I don't have any real prepared remarks, so let me maybe just lay out two philosophical statements that are at the basis for what we're talking about in terms of business, human resource development, and the model. At the core, what is the role of democracy? Why do we organize ourselves in a country that calls itself a democracy? Why do we have a constitution? Why do we go through elections? Why is this the preferred model of government for most parts of the world? I think that's the basic question. And I have interpreted in multiple places that in the organization of business, if you have capitalism and free markets at one end and complete public ownership of common ownership of property or communism at the other end, then it is hard to have less than high correlation between the nature of your economy and the nature of your social construct or national construct. It's very hard to run a communist country as a democracy. It's very clear that quickly the party becomes much more powerful than the people, and that's every country you can see around the world that has ever been communist. Equally, it's very hard to run a capitalist society that is not democratic, because somewhere you have to keep the checks and balances in place, that those who become victorious in the capitalist competitive model do not get to take control of the administration of the government, the country, the resources. So, if that is the case, then though almost all free market countries are democracies, the heart of the democratic function of a government is to sustain the social construct and the government role in such a way that free markets continue to function freely without getting captured, without having huge winners and many losers, and keeping society cohesive and everybody vested in the system that they exist in. And that's really what, in my opinion, the core role of democracy is. The core role of democracy is to keep society at peace, calm. Everybody believes they're getting a fair shake, or most people believe they're getting a fair shake, and there is no need for either social revolution or the kind of workers' revolution that Karl Marx predicted would be the end of capitalism and free markets. If that is the basic construct of democracy, then in most countries of the world, the debate is between what would be considered a left-leaning model or a right-leaning model, in the sense that the left-leaning model sees a greater role for government, sees a more active redistribution, greater regulation, greater constraints on corporate or individual behavior. And the rightist model reduces all of those. It assumes that people can reach equilibrium, the market will enforce its own discipline, and that businesses can thrive and sustain themselves and effectively not lead to oligopolies, monopolies, market breakdowns, crashes, structures, etc. In most countries that would be the case. The real political debate is between more left or more right, and that's true in most advanced economies in Europe, in the US, in Australia, most parts of the developed non-communist world. That's what politics is about. But as the director pointed out, in India, we have a unique situation. Of course, we are all as individuals, we are shaped by our experiences, by our path in life. A lot of our thinking is driven by what we have learned or what we have experienced, whether we know it consciously or subconsciously. As a country and as a culture and as a society, that's also true. So when we come from a land that has thousands of years of history, culture, some of it great, some of it not so good, because it created a hierarchy of the existence of human beings through things like the caste system, then a lot of our politics is driven or derivative of our history. That's really the root of the Dravidian model. It is what is otherwise a normal left-leaning model adapted to the history of our culture, of our society, of our land. And so, as the director said, the core of the Dravidian model is the equality of all human beings by birth. Men, women, caste, all of this should not matter. Everybody should have the same rights, opportunities, access, permissions, and equal social mobility prospects. And that's really the core of the Dravidian model. It is about social justice, it's about equality of opportunity, it's about progress through access to education, access to upliftment. So it is a unique leftist model for our history and our culture. And that's really the core of Dravidianism. But unlike many societies, in our state, at least for the last, 70, bulk of the years since independence, and in fact one would argue the bulk of the last century, there has not been a real pushback against this notion of how society should be structured. What should be the role of government? There's been very little debate, if you actually see, in the assembly proceedings or in the social construct or in public meetings or political platforms. There's not anybody really pushing back against the core of the Dravidian philosophy of any party. In fact, like most things, it comes down to the execution. The model is only as successful as the results, and therefore is only as validated as the results and the outcomes. Now, I would argue that in many ways the Dravidian model has been validated more than any other, at least in my understanding of the world, because it's hard to see either any other state, or for that matter any other country, burdened with the legacy that we were burdened with, to have made the kind of progress that we have made in the last 75 years since independence. Tamil Nadu as a state is one of the 4 large rich states of India, but unique among those 4 in terms of human development, social development, inclusion, social justice. All of our results are far apart from the other 3 large rich states. And yet, if you ask me today, do I think the movement and our values have reached their potential? The answer is absolutely not. It is hugely inefficient in execution, and this is not about political party A or B. I think, my party does better than the other one, but that's not the point. The point is that the system is not yet been brought to the level of execution where we should see the full benefits of these values and these philosophies and these approaches. I don't want to get into too much more now, because then we'll save that for the debate. But I'll just add 2 other things because of the topics here. What is the notion of good human resource management and human development? I've had the luxury of running large teams across tens of countries in my professional career, and then, in my role as the HRM Minister for the government of Tamil Nadu, we have, between government itself, PSUs, local bodies, and kind of contract employees and so forth, probably between 10 and 15 lakh people who work for the government of Tamil Nadu. The principles of human resource management and human talent development have advanced greatly, or our understanding of them and our understanding of organizational design, of psychology, of incentive alignment have all, at least at a global level, become very, very refined. You know, in places that I used to work, like investment banks or big consulting firms, there's a very clear understanding what is right, how you should get there, and so forth. I would say that's not the case in much of government. We have very few levers of control. The system is not designed particularly well. In fact, it's designed quite badly. And I have never seen such a large organization with such archaic organizational constructs anywhere else. But you're not going into government, most of you, you're going into the private sector. In the private sector, I think also the principles of the Dravidian movement apply in the human resource management area, in the sense that even in places like the largest investment banks and commercial banks of the world where I worked, in my time, I went out of my way to increase diversity, the percentage of female candidates that were interviewed and therefore hired, as well as the range of institutions from which we selected on-campus interview candidates. Because the diversity of thought, there are two main goals in that, in my perspective. One is, the more diverse the group you have inside your organization, the more likely you will have a robust debate and arrive at superior outcomes, rather than all people of one mindset going one way. The second is, most businesses, one way or the other, eventually interact with society, either as customers, as captives, as suppliers. And the more your organization reflects the makeup of the society you operate in, the more likely that you're attuned to your market, your customers, and you can achieve successful outcomes. So I think at the core of it, this notion that diversity gives us more healthy debates. If structured properly, equal rights and equal access to everybody gives us superior outcomes. And that we are trying to eradicate, or at least alleviate, the effects of centuries, if not millennia, of some discrepancies in our society, really drives much of our thinking. I would say we still have a long way to go. As proud as I am that I am a fourth generation member in this movement, as committed as I am to the values, I still feel that from an implementation, from an execution capability, we have miles and miles to go. And that's what drives me to work every day, to keep trying to get better outcomes for the people. So I'll stop there and then participate in the questions. Thank you.
As you said, left and right you have spoken to equal opportunities, but you had to speak about, is it good for business school?
I would say it's good for business for one reason, one core reason. If you look around the world, and somebody please do this, go and look at the per capita GDP or the quality of life or the rating of livability of cities, and compare that to the extent of social welfare and inclusion that governments practice. And you will find that, again, this goes to the heart of democracy. If you want to have successful capital markets and free markets, you must have a successful democracy. Of course, there's a means, and that is good institutions. Good institutions, strong, independent institutions, ensure that the market remains free and that the optimal outcome in terms of growth, per capita results, business margins, all of that come out. So, you know, at an underlying philosophy, if you have an inclusive society and high distribution with relatively high per capita incomes and purchasing power, it's of course great for business. That's what business wants. I mean, business is in the business of making profit, right? That's the definition of a business, is that you want to succeed, you want to get market share, you want to improve your returns, your margins, your results. And that's a lot easier to do in a well-functioning society, capital investments are much easier to do when society is stable, when the law and order condition is good, when the rules are clear, when the institutions are strong. Everybody is able to predict what the risks that may occur in the pursuit of rewards are. And therefore, it's a lot easier to do investment decisions. It's a lot easier to attract capital when your society is calm, harmonious, and inclusive. And I would say, just look into this one other variable. One of the things about Tamil Nadu that separates us from, let's say, Maharashtra or Gujarat is the per capita purchasing power. You look at the percentage of consumer spending, and again, you will find that you have much more purchasing capacity in the average citizen in Tamil Nadu, which must by definition be good for business because you want to sell them something, a good or a service. So I would say the model is also good for business.
Okay, we will take it up. I have plenty of questions given by the students and others. And before that, I would like to request Professor Jairanjan to look at from the social perspective and social change perspective. Please take.
Thank you for this great opportunity to be here in this institute and to talk about the Dravidian model. In fact, my major complaint was that we have been talking about the Dravidian model for so many years now, but hardly any academic institution asked us to come and present the case or argue with us. In fact, we got very little output from the established institutions. In that sense, I greatly appreciate the effort by the LIBA to invite us and to talk about its suitability for the business model. Of all the topics, this was the very unique kind of a topic that I got to speak about. Now, I would like to take up from where our Honorable Minister has left. He was talking about the democracy. I would like to remind you of what Dr. Ambedkar, when he presented the Constitution, the final draft to the Constitutional Assembly, when it was about to be adopted, or after the adoption of the Constitution. He said, we have ensured one person, one vote, which means you are getting the political democracy straight away. Whereas many countries have struggled for so many years to get political democracy, one person, one vote kind of a situation. We straight away give you that, or we have got that. But I would like to warn you about one possibility. Unless you strive to make or work the social and economic democracy in the country, this political democracy will not survive. That was the warning that he gave. And with all pride, I would say, Tamil Nadu is the only state, because of the adoption of the Dravidian model, we have strived to win over the economic and social democracy. No other state has done that. And that is a sure way towards a full-fledged freedom. And I would like to remind you of another quote by Abraham Lincoln. He said, democracy is not a state where you can reach. Okay, it is a goal. You have to strive towards that all the time. Similarly, Dravidian model is not something, like scoring something like 100 out of 100. It's not that.